You were taught that likability is power, that warmth wins hearts, that your smile opens doors. But Machiavelli would laugh at that. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." A smile invites expectations, affection, breeds obligation, approval becomes a leash in every room you've entered smiling. You've unknowingly handed over your power. They saw it, and they took it. Machiavelli didn't believe in authenticity. He believed in outcomes. Not in being good, but in appearing useful. A smile is not strategy. It's surrender dressed in politeness. And in rooms where everyone plays nice, the coldest man controls the game. So here's your first lesson. Withdraw the smile. Watch who stumbles. Because silence, that's the real presence. They don't fear you because you've given them no reason to. You entered with a smile. You offered warmth. You tried to make them feel safe. But Machiavelli would warn you, those who try to make others comfortable are rarely safe themselves. The world teaches you to soften your edges, be agreeable, be pleasant, be nice. But niceness is a currency that burns fast in the fire of real power, because what is soft can be shaped, and what is shaped can be controlled. You were told that being liked is your first step to influence, but Machiavelli saw it clearly. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Respect is not granted by charm, it is earned by command. You think you've been playing the game, but really, you've been played every time you smiled to avoid tension. Every time you softened your words to keep peace. Every time you agreed just to avoid discomfort. You weren't gaining ground, you were giving it up. And the worst part? You thought it made you strong, but Machiavelli would never call that strength. He'd call it something else entirely, a costume, not a mask of strategy, but a mask of softness. And here's the truth no one told you. He who wears a soft mask invites a hard fate. You become easy to read, easy to map, easy to move in a culture obsessed with relatability. You're told that vulnerability is power, that openness earns trust, that being approachable makes you magnetic. But that's only true for those who don't need power. For those who do, softness is bait, vulnerability is a lever. And relatability? That's the word they use right before they disarm you, because when you're soft, they don't resist you. They consume you, and by the time you notice what's missing, it's not just your peace, it's your posture, it's your presence. Machiavelli knew the truth of appearances. He didn't demand authenticity, he demanded control. He wrote, "A prince must learn how not to be good, and to use this knowledge, or not to use it, according to necessity." Necessity, not morality, not comfort, not likability, necessity. And right now, your necessity is this: to kill the soft mask you've been taught to wear, because if you keep wearing it, you will keep bleeding power quietly, constantly, without ever realizing where it went, and they will keep smiling back, because why wouldn't they? You've made yourself digestible. You've made yourself edible. See, politeness can be a form of diplomacy, but used without force behind it, it becomes a signal, not of refinement, but of permission. It tells people how to treat you, how far they can push, how much they can ask, how little they can give. And when you finally say no, they won't understand, because you trained them to expect yes. You want to be seen, understood, appreciated, but Machiavelli never asked to be understood, only to be obeyed, and you cannot be obeyed when you are busy explaining. Every explanation you give dilutes your position. Every apology you offer softens your stance. every smile you wear. Invites expectations you will one day resent, so stop performing, start withdrawing presence. Is not an act, it is a force. It enters the room before you speak if you have to convince them of your worth. You've already lost the negotiation. There's a kind of man and woman who walks into a room and says nothing, and yet the entire room reacts. They don't speak, they don't sell. They don't submit, they stand silent. Unapologetic, unmoved, they are not unkind, they are unreadable. Because mystery isn't manipulation, it's protection. Machiavelli believed that silence was sharper than any response, and in your silence, they'll feel the edges you've hidden for too long. You've been told that to be seen, you must be visible. But visibility without force is exposure, and exposure without strategy is slaughter. If you want control, withdraw the impulse to relate, withdraw the desire to explain, withdraw the need to be understood, and replace it with something colder, heavier. Unapologetic, let your silence be uncomfortable. Let your no land without a smile. Let your disinterest speak louder than their praise. Let them feel your edges, because power doesn't ask for permission. It moves, it occupies, it owns the space it stands in. You want to be warm? Be warm with strategy. Be soft where it cannot cost you. But in rooms where power shifts, where hierarchy breathes, where loyalty is currency, kindness must be a calculation, not a default. When you walk into that room, they should wonder, what does your silence mean? Why don't you smile? Why are your answers short? Let them wonder, because while they search for your weakness, you are already reading theirs. That is what Machiavelli understood. People don't need to know who you are. They only need to know one thing, that you are not to be moved. And the soft mask? That was never you. That was the version of you that believed survival was about being liked. That thought control came from comfort, that wanted approval more than authority. But now you wear no mask. You walk in shadow, not shame. You enter cold, not cruel. You speak little, and they listen more. And every time you don't smile, the room takes a breath, because something just shifted. Your warmth is no longer public property. It is earned and rarely given. That is the law now. You are no longer digestible. You are no longer pliable. You are no longer available for the comfort of others. You are no longer soft, and that is your first weapon. Let them adjust to the cold. You are just getting started. You've been told that fear is wrong, that to be feared is to be cruel, that fear isolates, that it corrupts, that it turns you into something dark. But Machiavelli would look you in the eye and ask a different question. He would not ask if fear was dangerous. He would ask if it was useful. Men love at their own convenience, but fear at yours, because fear, when crafted with silence, with stillness, with surgical control, is not brutality. It is architecture. It's not rage. It's not chaos. It's not loud. Its law fades. Familiarity weakens it. Time bends. It need fractures it, but fear lasts. Fear does not soften. It does not fade in comfort. It is not dependent on your usefulness or their mood. It survives the seasons, because while love must be fed, fear only needs to be remembered. That is why Machiavelli chose it, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. You want to be respected, but respect without consequence is theater. It's a stage they applaud from, but never obey. Real respect is born in hesitation, in the silence you create. By doing nothing, in the air you change when you don't flinch, in the tension that wraps a room when you don't smile back. That tension, that is fear. Not the kind that makes people run, the kind that makes them sit straighter, watch closer, speak less. Fear, when sharpened properly, is a form of gravitational force. It pulls the room toward you, not with noise, but with silence, because when you walk in cold, unreadable, unapologetic, you're not rude, you're dangerous, not because of what you might do, but because they don't know what you might withhold, your reaction, your presence, your blessing. That's the game, you see. Machiavelli never glorified violence. He glorified calculated power. Fear is not violence, it is precision. It's not chaos, it's choreography. It's not threat, it's expectation. To Machiavelli, this was never cruelty. It was leverage, because while love invites closeness, fear enforces distance, and distance is power. They can't insult what they can't reach. They can't exploit what they can't read. They can't control what they can't predict. That's why mystery becomes dominance. In a world addicted to transparency, everyone wants to be real, now to be seen, to be understood, to be open. But Machiavelli understood. The more you reveal, the more predictable you become, and predictability is permission. It tells them how to hurt you, how to shake you, how to unseat you, but when they don't know what your silence means, they step lighter, they speak slower, they calculate around you. Fear is the pause between your breath and their reaction. It is not about making others tremble, it's about making them adjust, not because of your volume, but because of your gravity. Fear is the air that follows when you say little, but they say less when you move slowly, but they rush to accommodate when you choose stillness, and they interpret it as warning. You don't have to be feared by all, just by those who would otherwise assume you are weak. And right now, too many people have assumed that because you've been polite, you've been likable, you've been open. But openness is not strategy, it's exposure. They don't fear you because you made sure they didn't have to. You smiled, you explained, you reassured, you gave them safety, and they gave you limits. But now you step into the room without a smile, without apology, without availability. And in that shift, the power realigners know the burden is on them to adjust, to interpret, to feel what your presence means. You do not create this by being cruel. You create it by being unreadable. Stillness becomes a storm when no one knows what follows it. They expect warmth. You give pause. They expect explanation. You give silence. They expect reassurance. You give a stare, and in that moment, they remember. They remember that you are not for consumption, that your energy is not free, that your attention has a cost. That's what fear becomes. A reminder that you are not accessible, that your presence is not permission, that your attention is not affirmation, because Machiavelli understood something simple. People don't fear cruelty, they fear consequences. They fear not knowing when you'll walk away, not knowing what you're thinking, not knowing if they've crossed a line. Uncertainty is your blade, and you sharpen it with silence. This is not about being evil, it's about being inevitable. You want loyalty? Let them wonder what you'll do if they break it. You want space? Let them fear what happens if they violate it. You want influence? Let them feel it before you say a single word. Fear isn't yelling. Fear is what happens when you never raise your voice but still shift the temperature of a room. You are not there to be understood. You are there to be respected, and where respect ends, consequence begins. So walk slower, speak less, smile selectively. Let your restraint say what your mouth never will. Let your absence become presence. Let your coldness become heat. Let them adjust to your rules. because they were never playing by them. Before, Machiavelli would never beg for influence. He would construct it one pause at a time, one unreadable glance at a time, one deliberate withdrawal at a time. Fear is not force. It's a field. You don't throw it at people. You let it surround you. It is the quiet storm they sense, but cannot name, and when they can't name it, they watch you from across the room, from behind their words, from inside their calculations. You are not loud. You are not charming. You are not predictable. You are not soft, and that is why they'll never forget you. So take back your silence. Step into every room with tension as your companion. Be deliberate. Be distant. Be exact. Let them shape themselves around your gravity. Be seen less and watched more. That is how fear becomes currency and silence becomes command. They taught you to show up, to respond quickly, to stay visible, stay online, stay involved. But Machiavelli would call that a mistake, because presence without purpose is noise, and noise without tension is weakness. He would say, the more you're seen, the less you are valued. In a world addicted to overpresence, your disappearance becomes a power play. We live in a time where everyone is always available, always reachable, always offering themselves on demand. It feels like connection, but it's erosion. Every message answered too quickly, every smile given too easily, every presence too consistent. It drains the value of what you are, because what is always there is taken for granted. What is rare is studied. What is unpredictable is respected. To Machiavelli, absence was not passivity. It was strategy. A recalibration of energy, a deliberate withdrawal to increase your weight. When you vanish, you are not forgotten. You become myth. You become question. You become memory with power. Your silence becomes suspense. Your name becomes speculation. Your lack becomes leverage. Most people are afraid to disappear, afraid of being forgotten, afraid of being left behind. But if your presence meant anything, then your absence will echo, and if it doesn't, you were never truly there. This is the weapon of absence. It forces others to confront your value without you in the room. It tests their loyalty in silence. It measures your impact when your voice is missing. You become the storm after the silence, not the noise that fills the silence, the loud burnout, the visible blur. But the ones who leave and return with timing, those are the ones remembered. Power is not in the constant reminder. It's in the controlled withholding, in negotiation pause. In relationships, withdraw. In influence, delay. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let them feel the void. Because only then will they understand what you were really worth. You must resist the urge to explain your absence. Silence is the explanation. The lack is the message. To Machiavelli, mystery was not just theater, it was rule. He never asked to be pursued. He made them come to him, not because of charm, but because of absence with weight. So step back, disappear without warning. Stop offering your presence like it's free. You are not a public utility. You are a resource, and what is rare controls the room. You want to be remembered? Be missed. You want to be valued? Leave, and let the silence say what your presence never could. Your absence must haunt, or it means nothing. They told you to be honest, to speak your truth, to open your chest and let the world see what beats inside it. But Machiavelli would raise an eyebrow at that, because to him, truth was never sacred, only useful. You must learn how not to be good. He wrote, not evil, not deceitful, not good, because good people often confuse honesty with clarity, but in the hands of the unguarded, honesty becomes confession, and confession becomes surrender when you speak with the goal of being understood. You hand over a map, a blueprint to your internal architecture, where the cracks are, where the buttons are, where the walls are thinnest. Full smile as you share it. They'll nod. They'll act like it's noble, but Machiavelli would whisper. They are not listening to connect. They are listening to calculate. This is the cold edge of truth, a weapon when wielded with precision, a wound when offered without caution. You don't owe the world your depth, not your reasons, not your intentions, not your pain. You owe them nothing but outcomes. Speak to steer, not to bleed. Reveal only what distorts, confess only what confuses. The truth is a blade. You don't wave it for attention. You conceal it in silence until it must be used. And even then, you cut clean. Every moment you spend trying to be fully known is a moment you are being subtly, invisibly weakened, because transparency in the wrong rooms is not courage, it's bait. It tells your enemies what to target. It gives your rivals a script to recite against you, and the ones who say, "Just be real," are often the first to twist what you gave them. So instead of opening yourself, build reflections, not windows. Let them see what you choose. Let them think what you allow. Give them a version of the truth, angled, refracted, composed. Partial truths are not lies. They are tools. To Machiavelli, full truth was a waste unless it created advantage. He never aimed to be honest. He aimed to be effective. And this is where most people fall, in their need to feel known. They give up their leverage. They talk too much. They share too quickly. They explain what silence could handle, but silence is not absence. It is design. The less you say, the more they imagine. The fewer details you offer, the more power your presence carries. The vaguer your past, the more ominous your future appears. You don't need to lie. You just need to say less. Speak like a storm on the horizon, seen, not measured, heard, not understood the moment they believe they know. You've already lost control, because perception is power, and perception, once handed over, becomes a weapon against you. So let them fill in the blanks. Let them draw their own conclusions. Let them wonder if you're telling the whole story, because when they don't know exactly where you stand, they're forced to tread carefully, to lean in, to guess, and guessing is fear dressed as curiosity. You become untouchable, not through dominance, but through uncertainty. Let every word you speak serve direction. Let every truth you share shape position. Never speak to relieve your mind. Speak only to bend theirs. Truth is not for comfort. It is for control. Use it like a flame in a dark room. Not to warm them, to blind them, because once you stop speaking to be understood and start speaking to be calculated, you stop bleeding in public. You stop giving them access to your core. You stop performing vulnerability for people who haven't earned it. You create a kind of echo chamber, not of noise, but of myth. They hear only what you allow. They believe only what you never confirm, and in that silence, you become larger, heavier, harder to reach. The room fills the blanks with fear, with awe, with theories. Let them. That's the trap, and you are the architect. Truth is not for sharing, it is for steering. That is your new law, and your enemies will never see it coming. They expect the storm to scream, to break things, to rage, to roar, to flood the room with fury. But Machiavelli would tell you, the storm isn't the chaos. The storm is the silence that follows it. Real power doesn't explode, it withdraws. They expect you to react. That's their mistake. They've been conditioned to believe that strength is motion, that intensity must be loud, that control must be visible. But true power, cold power, sits still. It watches. It lets others spin themselves into exhaustion. Machiavelli understood this. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. And the intelligent man? He surrounds himself with those who can endure stillness, because stillness is where pressure reveals character. You were taught that holding your tongue makes you weak, that if you don't defend yourself, they win, that if you don't fight back, you're surrendering. But Machiavelli never cared about looking victorious. He cared about being victorious, and sometimes victory looks like sitting motionless, while the other side burns themselves alive, trying to provoke you. Stillness is psychological warfare. It leaves space for others to project, to wonder, to spiral. It turns the battlefield inward. They start fighting shadows you never even cast. That's why when betrayal comes, your reaction must be cold, not cruel, not chaotic. Cold, no raised voice, no lengthy message, no begging for closure, just the storm's center. A silence so heavy it crushes the noise around it. When they expected rage, give them nothing. When they expected a reaction, give them absence. When they expected to watch you break, give them something worse. No confirmation that they mattered at all. That's the game. Let them talk. Let them post. Let them scream. But you stay in the center. You don't flinch. You don't chase. You don't defend. Your stillness becomes unbearable because it says everything without saying anything. Machiavelli believed that silence was often louder than action, and in that silence, people reveal themselves. The guilty grow louder. The weak scramble to be heard. The unprepared show their desperation. You do nothing, and the entire room rearranges itself around your stillness. Because the truth is, those who cannot sit in silence are ruled by its. Stillness doesn't signal peace. It signals power unshaken. And once they feel that, once they realize you won't play their game, that you won't respond on cue, collapse on time, perform emotion for their validation, you become something else entirely. Unreachable, unreadable, untouchables. So hold your silence like a blade. Use it not as retreat, but as domination through denial. Don't correct them. Don't explain yourself. Don't defend your dignity to people who've already chosen not to see it. Let stillness be your storm. Let them drown in their own projections, because when the room goes quiet and you remain still, everyone begins to question who really held the power all along. They told you it's good to be liked, that approval is a sign of worth, that being chosen means you're winning. But Machiavelli saw through that illusion. He wrote, "One who tries to be good all the time is bound to come to ruin." He understood something most never will: the need to be liked is the leash of the unfree. It looks harmless, it looks like manners, it looks like kindness, but behind every forced smile, behind every no swallowed and every yes you didn't mean, is a silent transaction. You trade your clarity for comfort. You trade your position for peace. You trade your authority for applause. And what do you get in return? Temporary harmony, fake warmth, respect that evaporates the moment you stop. Performing approval is the drug, and like any addiction, it begins with a reward and ends with a chain. People pleasing is not generosity. It's a form of fear. It's war disguised as niceness. It's the quiet strategy of someone trying to survive a world that punishes directness. But to Machiavelli, directness wasn't cruelty. It was strategy without apology. He understood that being disliked is not failure. It is often a signal that you've said what had to be said, that you've drawn a real line, that you've finally chosen respect over reassurance. You've worn the mask for too long. You've played the part. You've said sure when you wanted to say no. You've been agreeable in rooms that deserved your resistance, and they praised you for it. They told you you're so easy to work with, so nice, so polite, so reliable, but Machiavelli would call that not praise, but profiling. They've learned your softness. They've learned your compliance. They've learned exactly how to get from you without ever giving to you, because the more you seek to be liked, the more predictable you become, and the more predictable you become, the easier it is to trap you. Approval addict never moves first. They wait, they watch, they adjust, they lose, because every time you contort your truth to protect someone's comfort, you confirm something darker. You are afraid to be seen without your mask. But here's the real truth. Being liked is not the win. Being understood is not the goal. Being tolerated is not the same as being respected. You don't need to be rude, but you do need to be clear. And clarity always offends someone. Machiavelli never begged for loyalty. He built systems that made disloyalty a risk, and you've been building peace that comes at your expense. The more you're liked, the more you become a mirror of what others want, not a reflection of your own power. You become digestible. You become easy. And what is easy is never revered. Reclaiming power begins with rejection, not of others, but of their permission. You stop explaining. You stop pleasing. You stop asking to be received. Instead, you become precise. You say no without softness. You hold silence without apology. You assert without checking if it made them uncomfortable. And when they call you cold, let them. That's the echo of losing control over someone they once manipulated. You were never meant to be liked by all, only by those who respect your edges. As the shift, praise becomes irrelevant. Peace becomes earned. Power becomes quiet. And you become sovereign, because in a world of performers, those who no longer need applause become kings. You don't need a throne to rule. You don't need a title, a crowd, or applause. You don't need to be followed, because the highest form of power never asks to be seen. There is a royalty that walks into rooms without announcing itself, a presence that speaks nothing but shifts everything. It is not loud. It is not desperate. It is not waiting for permission. This is the quiet crown, the final stage of control, where silence becomes rule, where absence becomes governance, where fear, stillness, and restraint converge into something heavier than intimidation, sovereignty. To Machiavelli, the true prince was not the one who controlled others. It was the one who no longer needed to. He understood that leadership without explanation is the rarest kind, because most people talk too much. They plead, they campaign, they argue their value, but the one who wears the quiet crown never does. They set their terms, they guard their time. They protect their peace like territory and treat every interaction as a border check. Your energy is not a democracy. It is a sovereign land, and not everyone has the right to cross into it. When you lead without noise, they don't know what you're thinking, so they move carefully. When you stop needing loyalty, the disloyal self-select, and when you stop defending your boundaries, you start defining them. You Don't build an empire by arguing, you build it. By becoming undeniable, a quiet crown is earned in the way you do not react, in the way you don't explain, in the way your absence makes more impact than their presence. This is not arrogance, it is architecture. It is the elevation of control above. Chaos, design over demand. You no longer chase loyalty, you don't even request it. You draw a line, and those with wisdom fall in line, and the rest, they fall away. That is the point to Machiavelli. Leadership was never about pleasing people. It was about outlasting them. He never asked to be liked. He ruled by precision. He ruled by outcomes. You don't win by being louder. You win by becoming inevitable. Let them question your silence. Let them feel the cold. Let them adjust to your standards or exit your kingdom. You are not part of the court. You are not their jester. You are not here to entertain, to comfort, or to seek validation. You are the storm they never saw coming, and the silence they'll never forget. You are the crown, not the court. The world taught you to smile, to explain, to prove, but Machiavelli knew that in the dance of power, noise is a distraction. He would whisper, "The lion cannot explain its roar." You've learned to step back, to observe, to become unreadable. You've traded likability for leverage, affection for architecture. Now, you do not chase presence. You are presence. The room shifts when you enter, not because you smile, but because you don't need to. And when you leave, they wonder what you're thinking, what you'll do next. That's power, so withdraw. Let your silence echo longer than their noise.